If you've ever opened up an old barn, church roof, or timber-framed house and wondered how the wood survived centuries of damp air, smoke and neglect, you're asking the right question. Medieval builders didn't have pressure-treated lumber, chemical fungicides, or climate-controlled interiors. What they had was experience, repetition, and a deep understanding of how wood behaves when it meets moisture. One of their most effective defences against rot and mould wasn't a coating brushed on at the end. It was a deliberate timber dip carried out before the wood ever became part of a building. This single step explains why medieval beams still stand while modern timber can fail in a generation. The hook most people miss about medieval wood survival. The secret isn't magic, and it isn't lost chemistry. It's timing. Medieval carpenters treated wood when it was still green, still open at the cellular level, and still able to absorb protective compounds deep into its fibres. Modern treatments usually sit on the surface. Medieval dips changed the internal environment of the wood itself, making it hostile to mould, fungus and insects long before construction even began. The medieval timber dip was built around lime, salt and water. Across Europe, especially in damp regions, freshly cut timbers were submerged for days or weeks in vats containing water mixed with slaked lime, ash or salt, depending on local tradition. Lime was the most common. When calcium hydroxide dissolved into water, it created a highly alkaline solution. Mould and fungal spores cannot survive in high pH environments. When green timber soaked in this mixture, the solution penetrated deeply into the wood's capillaries. This wasn't a surface wash. It altered the internal chemistry of the beam. Salt brine was used where lime was scarce. Salt draws moisture out of organic cells and disrupts microbial growth. In coastal areas, seawater itself became a preservative bath. Medieval builders didn't know microbiology, but they knew results. Wood soaked this way stayed cleaner, drier and harder for decades longer than untreated timber. Now, why did soaking matter more than simply coating the wood? Well, see, modern sealants are all about keeping water out entirely. But medieval builders, they took a different approach. They focused on what to do when water inevitably got in, because honestly, no building stays perfectly dry forever. The medieval dip, as it was called, accepted this reality. By saturating the wood with alkaline or saline compounds right from the start, they managed to prevent mould from ever taking hold, even when things got a bit damp. This method also, quite importantly, reduced internal cracking. Soaking the wood slowed down the drying process after it was cut, which in turn reduced those pesky stress fractures. Fewer cracks meant fewer pathways for moisture and spores to sneak in later. Just this one step alone, extended the life of the beams by a good margin. So, how did medieval builders actually fit the dip into their construction schedules? Well, timber wasn't just cut and slapped into place right away. Instead, it was cut seasonally, most often in winter when sap levels were at their lowest. After that, the logs were squared off and submerged in lime pits or water troughs, usually right near the work site. While the wood soaked, the builders got on with preparing the foundations and raising the stonework. By the time they were ready to start framing, the timber was already partially seasoned, chemically stabilized, and, as a result, much less vulnerable to mould. This process also discouraged insects. Lime residue inside the wood made it unattractive to beetles and larvae. Insects that bored into untreated wood simply didn't thrive in dipped beams. Why smokehouses and tar reinforced the same principle. In some regions, dipping was combined with smoke curing or pine tar applications. Smoke deposits phenols and formaldehyde-like compounds that inhibit biological growth. Pine tar sealed the surface after dipping, locking the treatment inside. These methods worked together, not as isolated tricks, but as a system. Each layer reduced moisture retention and microbial life. How this knowledge applies today without romanticizing the past. You don't need a medieval village to apply this logic. Builders restoring historic structures often pre-soak replacement timbers in limewater before installation. Off-grid builders and homesteaders use similar techniques for barns, sheds, and timber frames where moisture is unavoidable. So, a practical modern adaptation starts with green or, minimally dried wood. A simple lime water solution, made from builder's lime and clean water, can be used to soak posts or beams for several days. After removal, the wood is allowed to dry slowly in the shade, not in the sun. Once it's dry, a breathable finish like linseed oil or pine tar can be applied. Now, the result isn't waterproof wood. What you get is mold-resistant wood that can breathe without rotting. Now, this approach is especially useful for ground-adjacent structures, crawl spaces, and unheated buildings. It also works for tool handles, fence posts, and outdoor timbers when pressure-treated lumber isn't desirable. Why did modern construction abandon the dip, you might wonder? Well, speed killed the medieval method. Industrial construction prioritized rapid drying, fast installation, and standardized materials. Soaking wood takes time and space, you see. Chemical treatments replace patience. The irony is that many modern preservatives trap moisture or degrade over time, while medieval methods relied on mineral chemistry that doesn't break down. What centuries of surviving timber prove beyond debate is quite remarkable. Medieval builders didn't guess. They tested these methods across generations. The beams still holding cathedral roofs, bridge trusses and longhouses are proof. Mould didn't defeat them because it never had a foothold to begin with. If this kind of forgotten practical history matters to you, do consider subscribing to the channel and share this video with anyone who builds, restores, or simply wants to understand why the past solved problems we keep reinventing.